Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here for this afternoon's presentation of positives and pitfalls of AI. We will go ahead and get started right now. I'm going to start with the land acknowledgement. The County of Los Angeles recognizes that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tataviam, Serrano, Quiche, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to the elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in land seizures, disease, subjugation, slavery, relocation, broken promises, genocide, and multi-generational trauma. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these ancestral lands. We are dedicated to growing and sustaining relationships with Native peoples and local tribal governments, including, in no particular order, Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, Gabrielino Tongva Indians of California Tribal Council, Gabrielino Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, Gabrielino Band of Mission Indians, Quiche Nation, San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, San Fernando Band of Mission Indians. I want to say welcome again to today's program, our third series in a series of four. The first one was basics, AI concepts. The second one last month was how to use AI prompts effectively. And this one is positives and pitfalls of AI. My name is Julian Zamora. I'm the Adult Literacy Coordinator, and I'm happy to present this program to all of you. And if you do have questions, you can throw those in the Q&A. And if you also have have any responses as well, you can use the chat as well. Thank you to my staff for handling some of those back-end issues. Let's go ahead and get started. So this is what we will be covering in this webinar today: the positives of AI, the pitfalls of AI, some library resources, and also have time for questions. As we know, AI has been a big technological advancement in human history. It has been said that AI is the most powerful technology ever invented. And this was said by a gentleman named Mustafa Suleyman, who's the CEO of Microsoft AI. Obviously, he has skin in the game, and he thinks that this technology was built to really reduce human suffering, right? And so that's interesting the way that's kind of worded. We know that AI, in particular, processes large amounts of data much faster than we could as humans, and what they process are trained data sets on information from the web that has been given to that specific model, and there's tons of models out there. And based on these models and this information, it gives us and helps us as humans to determine information, make decisions, focus on different examples, and also correlations and things like that, right? How can we predict the future essentially for certain things, big things, right? It has also been said that AI has the ability to advance us exponentially in various aspects of our lives. In what ways? We will see. So in our lives, AI is currently in our search engines. So we see this in Google when you search for you type in any information into Google. Now it uses AI to provide you those answers more than it used to maybe 5-10 years ago. Way more information. This is also in smartphones. If you're using Siri, Alexa, different applications, these are already embedded into everything that we use in our everyday everyday work and everyday lives. You can also see this in the creative fields, for specifically AI in scripting or script writing. You could see that it was used, or what I've read is that it was used to look for themes in different movies, when something was created. Pre and post production, from what I've read, visual effects. It was also used to, for example, age people, whether someone's older, they use them to age them much older, or also make them look younger, right? It's so interesting to see the type, different things that AI is being used for. And also distribution and marketing, such as, we see this in Netflix, where AI is using your prompts, that based on your previous showings and films that you've seen and things like that. It can provide you with suggestions, right? That's AI in our everyday lives. That you may or may not know that is being used, behind the scenes. AI has definitely infiltrated all aspects of technology, and some that we haven't even thought of yet. Here, just an example of some headlines of AI. These are obviously positive headlines, because we're talking about the positives. OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic all offer AI tutors for students. Do they work? This is interesting in the education field. We know that students have been using AI. Also, teachers, administrators. From what I've read, is teachers who've tried to use AI have found that it can help make their jobs easier, from coming up with lesson plans to generating student project ideas to creating quizzes. With assistance from AI, teachers can gain more time to spend with their students, right? So that's a positive. There was an article here, a survey of 3 out of 5 business leaders say that AI has improved work-life balance. You can think of how it's being used in work, right? I think of office settings and things like that, make things, menial tasks much faster. We've seen enhancements in science. And for example, this article says AI can now predict who will go blind years before doctors can. So researchers in this article said that they trained AI on tens of thousands of eye scans, enabling doctors to predict which patients need early treatment and which can be safely monitored, cutting down on unnecessary procedures while preventing vision loss. So that's an amazing progress and ability that cuts down on, let's say, hiring doctors, and time that takes away from seeing patients and things like that. And when I say AI, they used it um, with their own information, and they gave this AI, provided the AI with all this data, and the AI was able to figure out, which patients may need more help, right? So before they go blind, which is amazing. Another article is it's affecting how it can predict flood storms, in which areas to flood, and storms, and which areas to maybe evacuate sooner, right? We see everything with climate change and how that's affecting the weather, and how many people, lose their homes, need to relocate, whether temporarily or permanently. We see that AI is assisting, professionals in that field, so that they can better predict weather patterns and things like that. So, every day it feels like something new is coming out in the news about the positives of AI and how it can help us as humans work better and assist us in everyday work. Oh, somebody asked really quickly, how can you spot deepfakes that are AI generated and use celebrities to endorse products? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. When I talked about uh, how it's affected the film industry, deepfake is very controversial, because of, as things are created, and is it that person who's talking? Sound can be so easily manipulated now and created by AI in these programs that we don't know whose voice it is. In the film industry, they use, that specific example was used for the production side of that sense, right? But we can see, kind of going in, how into my next slide in kind of the pitfalls of how using this tool can be used negatively and in the wrong hands, right? It has a lot of power. That's something that the CEO of Microsoft AI really brought home. That's a good question. Type the answer. Okay, so I'll let somebody else take care of that. So some of the pitfalls of AI, and there's a lot of them, so I'm going to cover most of this presentation on that. Number one is misinformation. We don't know, we know where this information is coming from. When AI was given certain data sets, um, it could be biased because we don't know where this information was coming from. Think of facial recognition. Think of scenarios where certain stereotypes were kept bringing up when let's say you do a prompt and you say a doctor, right? You put in a prompt for a doctor, and it would just give you male responses of a doctor, not just not female doctors as well, right? So those are some of the biases that were initially, I believe in the beginning of AI when it was created, you would get a lot more misinformation than or bias than compared to now. Same thing with people of color, right? You would see more people, people who are white who would come up as prompts versus people of color, right? So there's definitely biased information from this information that the AI is getting it from. You also see, at least in the beginning, inaccurate health information. And so we're thinking of prompting. When you prompt information on health, you don't know how old this information is. Where did it get it from? Do you know if it's fabricated? A lot of this information that you get from AI may or may not be true. There's a lot of articles out there that state that people will just copy information, especially health-related information, and later to find out that none of it was true. It was just kind of made up. And so figuring out the differences is always important. And really the human element is what makes something useful. It definitely lacks that with AI. Another pitfall of AI is copyright infringement. This is kind of a no-brainer. We see these from image creation. I've talked about the different AI programs that you can create, and most of them now you can at a much faster rate than before. 5 years ago, it would take a week or two to create an image, and it was really fuzzy. And you can see the comparison between doing something back then to doing something now. It takes just a couple seconds to create a new image. But again, where was this image created from? Where did it get its quote unquote inspiration from? You see a lot of, especially now, a lot of artists really against AI for rightful reasons because their style is being taken and reproduced by AI into everyday art, images, things like that. And so there's really a backlash from the artists. Again, think of music, same thing. AI can now create music from, from different formats. But what I've read is that a lot of it is not as effective in terms of still missing that human element in creativity. And I think if you're in the music industry, I think you're more attuned to those examples as well. I did talk about film where the copyright infringement, same thing. It may get a clip from a certain film, a certain video, commercial, things like that, and use it in something that you prompted to do. And are you allowed to do that, right? The AI doesn't know that because it's just a program. It just retrieves information. That's what we've trained it on. But if you're using it as an end user, you have to give credit, but you may not know that. Well, where did it get it? Kind of going back, sorry, to the music. Something interesting as well that I found was that with music, especially with things like Spotify and all these platforms where you're listening to music. The algorithms of AI may prioritize mainstream genres and artists, and they may inadvertently marginalize niche genres and independent musicians. So that's really interesting. I didn't think about that, where these recommendations that your platforms are giving you um, now may not be, maybe biased. Kind of goes back to the whole bias thing as well. And of course, the written language, we know how effective it can be, AI in terms of helping you with writing and thinking of ideas. But at the same time, that language can be taken from anywhere. If you're not familiar with the famous quote of a certain book, all of a sudden it gives it to you in a prompt or something, and you use it, um, you may not know that that's a famous quote. Right? It could be taken from anywhere and everywhere, right? And everywhere, I'm meaning the internet, not just something locked away or anything like that, but anything out there on the web is pretty much that's public facing, is definitely up for grabs in AI. So the things we have to really think about is with copyright infringement is what is original. If you ask different artists or if you ask different people, it can be kind of a long conversation, right? Because music, let's take for example music. Music has, you see artists use other people's music in their own music, and is that copyright infringement? Right? Certain um, I think it goes down to how familiar it is, and if they're using the same lyrics and things like that. And so I can see AI kind of doing the same thing, and that kind of falling into that category of what's originality, right? I guess we'll let the courts decide where that is. Oh, sorry, I missed the message earlier. I did mention deepfakes. So deepfakes are where you can take somebody, or you can take, for example, you can make somebody, a famous person, for example, say a speech, and it will create the image and a short video of somebody speaking, but it's not really them, right? You're just typing in the information, you're typing in whatever you want this um, image to say, and video, and it's them speaking with their language and things like that. So that's what deepfakes are. It used to be just images. It used to be like a deep fake of somebody being at somewhere, or not being fully clothed or something like that, right? That's where deepfakes originally came from. But now technology has advanced so much that deepfakes are now videos, and it's really hard to decipher whether it's them or not, because it sounds just like them, looks just like them, and it's really interesting to see where that takes us. I'm looking at the questions as well as I go through this. Somebody asked, does AI provide extensive citations? I don't know about citations, but some of the platforms do provide links after like every sentence, that they provide you with information, and it's your responsibility, if depending on how you're going to use it, to cite that link, cite that video. I've seen that with text, in text format, but I don't know about like images and music and film and things like that. I don't know. Good question. That's a very good question. So more pitfalls of AI include job displacement. I've already talked about some of the industries that AI has affected. One that we know of, that we've seen, is customer service. We see this with the company Klarna and also Delta Airlines. They're now using OpenAI technology, which serves as a front line of customer support. So if you call in, you're not really speaking to a person, you're speaking to a program that sounds like a human. It's available 24/7. and it's across 23 markets in over 35 languages. And it's a digital agent that handles approximately two-thirds of all customer chats, and it's roughly about 1.3 million conversations per month as of mid 2025. And this is just Klarna, which is which is mind-boggling, right? Not even taking into account Delta Airlines or other companies as well. And so we see some of the displacement, of people being affected who have customer service jobs, speaking over the phone. You may see that going away in the future as AI and really technology improves at a faster rate. In the before times, you would see that and most websites already have that, as you may know. They have a chat bot, and that's an AI chat bot. It's somebody who's you can just text and ask you, how can I help you? And it has um, pre preset answers to probably hundreds or thousands of questions and subjects, and it's only after a long time that you can request to actually speak to a representative, an actual person. So somebody asked a good question: what do you mean by job displacement? So that means jobs are being replaced by AI and technology, and people are losing their jobs because companies are using, you know, maybe technology that uses AI, and they're letting go of, or not hiring more people, or letting go of current employees. And so this is what it means by job displacement. Another um, another sector are warehouse workers. We've seen this already in Amazon with Kiva robots. These are robots that are classified as automated mobile robots, and they're designed to zip across warehouse floors, transporting lightweight shelves with ordered goods to human operators for picking. They say that the system significantly boosts efficiency by reducing manual picking time and improves order accuracy, and it creates a safer, more ergonomic work environment because workers don't have to bend down and lift heavy items or work near hazardous equipment like forklifts. So Kiva robots do utilize AI in that sense, but it's not necessarily just AI. They use AI as part of the Kiva robots. So it's just amazing to see how this technology is kind of infiltrated into this sector. And so big companies like Amazon, and I'm sure others, are relying more on these robots, and not hiring as many as people, and really more, which I'll talk about at the end, is we're really relying on people, maybe some upskilling in order to work, and know how to um, train and how to use these robots at the same time. And finally, I did talk about film workers. I talked about how it's a really useful and effective tool for an AI. One of the examples was location scouts. So um, it's really affecting everybody across the whole industry: location scouts, animators, screenwriters, directors, even actors. For example, location scouts. One example that I read was that you could program or ask AI to look at essentially thousands of locations in the world, that you think would best be a good suggestion or good feature in the movie, based on whether, let's say, for example, it's a western, so it looks through thousands of pictures, and maybe even other video and scouting things. And so you can see how you know uh, movie studios are not spending as much money hiring even a location scout, because that takes time, going out there, traveling, seeing different places, seeing what other movies have been filmed at. What's interesting too with actors is they're definitely fighting back against AI, where part of their contracts say that they can't use their faces for in deep fakes or anything like that in future projects with certain in general. That's part of their contracts, which is really interesting um, as well. And who else really, right? I'm sure there's tons of sectors that I didn't talk about that AI is already affecting. We just gotta see how realistically can this be used effectively, right? One of the things that's very controversial with AI, and the thing that people always ask about is power usage. Not only is as if you don't know, with AI, essentially they're computers, and a lot of computers are a lot of servers that are hooked up and they use electricity. Um, in order and then in these servers and these warehouses that are just filled with tons and tons of computers, it gets really hot. And so one of the ways besides temperature control is they use water to cool down these systems. And I looked up ChatGPT. They say that a simple search uses 10 times the electricity as a Google search in comparison. Um, they also say that creating images is thousands of times more energy intensive than text searches and can use as much electricity as it takes to charge your phone per image created. That was from an article in 2024, and I'm assuming that it's gotten better, more efficient in that sense, but that's still a lot of electricity and water usage that it's using. Um, I read an article that by 2028, it estimated that the U.S. energy uses it's going to be 300 terawatt hours of energy annually, which is enough to provide electricity to over 28 million households. This is just for AI use here in the United States, and we're not talking about globally. With water, it's estimated that by 2028, which is only 3 years away, it's going to require as much as 720 billion gallons of water annually just to cool AI servers, which is enough to water and meet the indoor needs of 18.5 million households. So that is an amazing comparison when you think about how much resources we're dedicating to this one specific technology. There's also talk of how AI uses precious metals. Think about the materials that are used to create more and more computers and servers, and just in general, how much resources are used for that. And also environment, there's tons of environmental concerns where the water use is taken from water stressed areas and can potentially raise utility bills as companies build more infrastructure to meet the demand. What I read that Chevron is recently announced a partnership to build more gas power plants just to support AI data centers. So that's really interesting how we're not really moving away from fossil fuels. At this point in time, it seems like Chevron has decided to move forward with that. And as we're going, you would think that or previously we were going more towards more environmental power usage, right? But now it seems like we're going in the opposite direction. So obviously, with such large AI systems, we're producing things at this scale. We use resources from the environment, and we just got to think about how much we consume. How much is this compared to the larger usage as well? So very large numbers to think about, but definitely a concern that you see all the time. Another pitfall of AI, I kind of talked about the opposite end of, this when I'm talking about is education as a field, but also as, as humanity. Um, I, Learning to think um, in general, that's why we went to school. You learn to think critically, how to analyze data, how to manage secondary sources, things like that. And one of the pitfalls is, are we really learning how to think? Because with AI, you can just ask it a question and it will give you really good answers. In my opinion, really good answers for, depending on what you're searching for. But what I've learned is that cases have emerged in schools where students submit AI written essays without fact checking, and this is leading to misinformation and academic integrity issues. And so you already see a problem with that, with the use of AI in the education field, specifically with ChatGPT. Um, Teachers can use also AI programs that can help detect AI writing to help teachers determine if their students are essentially cheating, right, and just copying. But sometimes even those programs may falsely identify a student's original work as plagiarism. So you're running into both issues at the same time, where the system itself can't, you can't rely on the system to even root out what is AI versus what isn't AI. And so that's concerning as well. So moving forward, I just talked about some of the positives of AI, and also some of the pitfalls of AI. But moving forward, experts agree that we can't ignore this technology. It's already here, and it's so quick that it may be integrated in certain things that we haven't even thought about. Um, we must, as a society, we must keep asking questions in terms of whether this is a good tool or a bad tool to use. When the internet came out, people dismissed it because they didn't know what the implications of it would do, and now see how the internet has connected us across the world. We must think about what type of jobs will be created because of AI, and of course, what type of jobs will it replace? There was an interesting podcast with Trevor Noah, where he interviewed the CEO of Microsoft AI, and his his response to that was, maybe in the future, AI will have replaced so many jobs that we can, uh, you know, as a society, do jobs that and do work really. I think the attention was on work and focus on things that we want to do, not necessarily that we have to do, right? That's very utopian speak, for that sense. But these are the type of questions that we have to think about if we continue to use AI. And by we, I mean in the industries and companies and governments as well. Also, I think I talked about it earlier, but what upskilling will be required of us to keep up? Some of those warehouse workers that were let go, now if they want to keep their jobs or be in that field, they have to learn how to um, program these robots and utilize and see how they work and things like that, because it made their jobs easier. They don't have to lift as many heavy objects. They just have to make sure that everything is working correctly and things like that. And so those are the type of things that we have to be aware of. And it's skeptical, right? Be skeptical, of course, of always new technology. Ask difficult questions and see if it's worth using. um, and ultimately it's on us to, and on you to see if you want to use it or not to use it, to use this technology, right? If you don't use it, you may be left behind, whatever that means. If you use it, make sure you're using it um, in a positive way and not in a negative way. But that's ultimately up to you. Sorry, I'm looking at some of the Q&A. We also have some library resources. This ends my presentation. I also have sent all of you in the past, if you've attended these presentations, a link to our LinkedIn Learning, which is a free database with expert instructors, high quality videos, transcripts, and course materials. And there's no limit. There are a lot of subjects on AI. They have a lot of really good material, and I've retrieved some of the material in this presentation from those videos. And it's free, and I highly recommend that you use it if you're interested in furthering your learning about this subject and other subjects as well. Our next and final webinar will be next month on October 22nd. It's going to be how to use AI at work, kind of bringing it back down to reality and how you can use it uh, at work for different resources. I'm going to be demoing how to write a, how to write an email, how to help it to summarize a large paper, things of that nature, and how you can utilize it. And also, I know somebody asked in one of the other Excel programs how to and PowerPoint as well, how it can help you create a PowerPoint and things like that. So I highly recommend all of you attend if you're interested. And in the spring, we're going to have an AI symposium, which is going to be a half-day virtual program of I'm going to be reaching out to experts in the field, and you can hear from them about their opinions on certain topics related to AI. We don't have a date yet for that, but expect that to be in the spring of 2026. So now we have time for questions. I went through it pretty quickly, but I wanted to get, make this more of a conversation to see, what are your opinions about the positives and or pitfalls of AI. Somebody asked, how can AI help with unwanted email? That's a good question. I don't know if AI specifically can help you with that, but I know that some of the email companies is already um, classifying your. I'm thinking of Gmail, Google. They automatically categorize your emails if you're using the desktop version, from junk mail to advertisements, and essentially what they're doing is they're looking at keywords within the email to see if it's an advertisement, if it's junk, or if it's something that it's important. And so you can create, and once you start labeling or putting in and categorizing yourself those emails, it will learn from that and from that observation and from that pattern, and it'll um, better categorize your junk email. So things like advertising. And so it's already being used. I don't know if it's AI specifically that's doing that, but that's just a neat feature that I've seen. Somebody asked, what about using AI as a therapist as a pitfall? That's interesting. A lot of things there to unpack. It really depends on, if you are looking at, if you want a human therapist, I would, that would be like you searching one-on-one, making sure that it's in person, even if it is on video, which so much, telehealth has exploded, meaning like a virtual health communication and assistance that way. Make sure that the person or the person that you're speaking to is actually a human being. With something I've read actually on the opposite end as a positive is a lot of older folks are using AI to communicate and also to solve really the loneliness epidemic that's currently happening in the US with such a large population being over the age of 65. And so it's called the graying of America. So we've seen that kind of not really therapy, but it's being used in as a relationship tool, as someone to speak. And so that's interesting as well. I think it's it's up to you really to see if it's a pitfall. I'm sure there are pitfalls because it's not a person, it's a program. And so It just depends, whether that's a negative thing for you, or if really the quality of the answers, I think is where it comes down to, right? And also, if we rely on this technology too much, I think that's where the issue really comes, especially for therapy. Um, Somebody asked about regulations. I think that's a good question. I know that the current administration is very pro AI. Um, they've really um, given permission to companies to really lean that way. I don't know where that's going to come from, whether that's from, the public kind of making that importance on their end, or whether that's going to come from government. But um, from from that podcast that I heard, really it's about everybody, right, coming together and making their case in terms of what's important to them, right? If we don't want AI to make its own decisions and start thinking on its own, and things like that, that's where the regulations come into place. And if we don't want AI in certain parts of our lives, that's something where we as consumers have to make that case and cause, right? You saw that where my example with the actors, right? They've made some of those um, um, rules into their contracts, so that's interesting. Ooh, somebody had a great suggestion with therapy, doctor-patient confidentiality. Exactly. Is it really private and privacy? That's a great thought there. Where is AI really, um, and this program, if you're using it for that, is it really private, right? Is your information out there? Who knows, right? And so you're really responsible for, when you agree to these agreements, to these user agreements. You really have to read the fine print to make sure that it's not out there, that it is doctor-patient confidentiality, and if the AI is really a doctor, right? So great question. Yeah, it brings into question HIPAA, definitely, the law about HIPAA. So definitely a good comment. Somebody asked, can you talk about the benefit and speed at which they may be able to find cures for diseases? That's a good question. I don't know. I think it just depends on which disease you're talking about, right? I don't know. I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but from the examples that I read and news articles and things like that, it was really the doctors and the researchers that were using AI to train the model, by giving it data, and based on that data, it would give them suggestions, it would give them patterns, and things like that. And so it's about the researchers doing that work, that I think this the speed, which can be helped, hopefully faster, right? We hope technology will help us out, for the good of humanity. Somebody asked, they love using it, AI. They have a concern about my information is safe to put in the system. I believe that some of the AI platforms, if you pay for them, and if you, let's say you do it, but I'm thinking of ChatGPT. I believe if you start a project, it's not using that information um, out there. It's keeping it within your use as your user, and as your own project, and as your own profile. That's what I meant. And so you can kind of look into that to see which ones do do that. But again, I don't know if that's a guarantee, that even if they say they may be doing something, we don't know. I'm just thinking about certain companies that, not AI related, but where their information was, may have been compromised. I'm thinking of the of that gene, that that gene one, where you try to find your information. Help me out, guys. I'll think about it. But anyways, yeah, that's on you. But yeah, definitely look into that to see which I know that some have prompting where it's not public, where you can make it kind of private and won't be used in that way.
Julian,
Yes.
so right now, one would have to read the privacy policies of individual AI companies to know how they're using users' data. And typically, those privacy policies are forthright about just how private the information that people input into the chatbots are. The only way to get full privacy using AI chatbots is to install it on your own computer, and that's possible to do. Um, you would have to have a fairly powerful computer to use models that are similar in in power, like in amount number of parameters, as the biggest models that you get for free from Google or ChatGPT or Claude or Grok from X. But if you have a pretty fast computer, it is possible to do. It requires some technical expertise though. But in that situation, all of the inference or all of the computation happens on your own computer. So then none of it goes to any company. But it gets a little bit that's opening up a door to a larger, more technical conversation.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that. Oh, like good to know that it is a possibility. Somebody asked, let's see, has our increased use of AI technologies made us become more isolated, less interested in meeting other humans? That's possible. I think that's with technology in general. And um, I think when we just rely on that technology, and especially with COVID, when we were all stuck at home over the years, and you see kind of how that has affected, especially with students and young teenagers, and they have less interpersonal skills and less relationships and things like that, and you can definitely see kind of that taking place, but um, definitely has increased people using it. Whether we will become more isolated, really, it depends on the technology itself and the user. So I hope not. I hope not. How is AI being used for military applications? Are we heading to problems that are noted in the movie Fail Safe? I don't know on that one. That's interesting. On that, I urge you to research that and get back to us on that. That's interesting. Somebody asked a good question. I don't know the answer to. Are there agencies in place which are working to both evaluate and enforce AI practices and policies? I would hope so. Think of like NGOs, non-government agencies, um, um, com the companies are the ones that are creating these AIs or have created AI technology. And so we would hope that, they're putting us as humans, in good at the top of their concerns. But, I think um, I would hope that there are agencies out there. I don't know. That's a very good question. Yeah, somebody asked a very good question too. Can I delete what I've typed into ChatGPT? Um, so yes, I've used ChatGPT. You are able to delete some of the chats, but if I believe the chats are saved within the system itself, and so even though it may have been deleted on your end, on your profile, it still may be out there. And so that's another privacy concern as well. Whatever you put into an ask of ChatGPT, or sorry, AI programs, it's out there, and just be aware and be conscious of those privacy concerns. Somebody asked a good question. Can you address the issues related to the vast amounts of energy AI uses? It's not environmentally friendly, so that makes me hesitant to fully embrace AI, even as I study generative AI for imaging. Yeah, what the companies have said is that they're they're using more they're more effective in using that energy and water, and so they're trying to cut down on energy usage by being using solar energy and renewable sources and things like that. But we know that they're using a lot of it, and so we will hope that it gets better as technology improves. But I think that's really on you, um, if you're to be fully pro AI. What does that mean, right? If you're supportive, knowing both sides, it's kind of what you have to accept at this point in time. Somebody asked, at which point will AI overpower humanity? Hopefully never. That's for the filmmakers and artists to think about and give us examples. Let's hope not. Let's hope that. And um, this is funny, but at the same time, we are in control of these systems. We can essentially pull the plug, as to quote the podcast, on these programs, because that's what they really are. They're just programs, like a computer. And so, until everybody, or unless everybody pulls a plug at the same, completely, then AI will be prevalent, into the near future. I don't know if hopefully it won't overpower humanity. Hopefully we'll still be in charge. Somebody asked, is the water the AI uses reusable and recyclable? From what I've read, only I believe it's 80 only. I want to get this right. I believe, let me go back. From the article that I read, and I will provide these articles afterwards as well. Everything that I got from this presentation is that some of it, only a small amount is reusable. I believe it's 20%, meaning that it's going back to the water source that it was retrieved from, and 80%. And when you think about these cooling systems, is a lot of this water is evaporating, and that's the water loss that they account for these cooling systems. So it's very interesting that the way that we're using water to cool these systems, and so much water loss. So yeah, but that's a good question. All right. I don't see any new questions. Some of these questions I just can't answer. But thank you all so much for joining us tonight, this afternoon. Apologies. I appreciate all of you being here. And I will be sending out this recording to everybody who attended. And thank you for providing your chats and also your questions. If I didn't get to all of them, I apologize. I just can't answer some of these. However, definitely keep researching about AI, and hope to see you at the next um, webinar. Thank you all so much, and thank you to my staff, Selenia and Oleg, for answering our questions tonight.